The following episode of Film Talk is brought to you by HostGator. HostGator is a leading provider of shared, resold VPS and dedicated hosting solutions. Their award-winning support is available 24/7 via phone, email, and live chat. Discover why over 9 million websites trust HostGator and sign up for a new hosting package using the coupon code GAMEITALL and receive 25% off your first hosting plan. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Film Talk here on GameItAll.com. This is Brendan, freezing his ass off here in New Brunswick, talking to Jason Ancona. Is that correct? Right. Pronunciation? Okay. Jason Ancona, who directed and wrote, I believe, Dr. Cheapskate. And so right off the bat, before we get too deep into this edition of Film Talk, where can people check out Dr. Cheapskate and purchase the movie?
That is a great question. Right now, we're doing a little bit of a festival run. We just had one in Chicago, and we're starting to go on a couple in the next few weeks. We're trying to get distribution. If we don't get it, then we'll try going VOD via iTunes and Amazon and some other places. But yeah, right now we don't have distribution yet. So.
Okay, so right now you're kind of aiming at maybe like a limited theater run and then on demand as well in some form.
And that would be awesome, yeah.
Awesome. And so the website will be right underneath the video, so people can check that out, I imagine, and get updates on that.
Awesome.
I'm just asking.
Yeah. Sorry. Yes, they can. Okay. If you go to the website, we'll definitely post any updates. We're going to be in Los Angeles. We got that coveted, not so coveted really, spot on Memorial Day at, I think it's like 12:15 at the Beverly Hills Lemley 3. So we'll be there. We'll be in Peoria, Illinois for the Laugh or Die Comedy Fest. I believe that's June 11th, but we'll post it on the site. And actually, we updated all that stuff on the Facebook page as well. So.
Okay, cool. Made it sound like I was editing your website there. I run drcheapskate.com. So then just tell us a little bit about the film, like about the plot, and maybe kind of what other films or even like what inspired you to write it, I guess.
Yeah, so the film is basically about kind of a lonely guy who's, and he happens to be a doctor and he happens to be cheap. And I also have an uncle who's a retired anesthesiologist and is very thrifty. I mean, that's just him. But a lot of the stuff comes from my life. Back to the story, it is about a guy who's kind of been through a divorce. It's kind of brutal, and he doesn't really want to start dating again. He moves to a new city and doesn't know anyone. He's just not really into getting back into dating again. And so he meets an old acquaintance, and they end up becoming friends, and he kind of pushes him to start dating again. So when I moved to Austin about 5 years ago, I didn't know anyone, and I didn't actually have a job even. So about a year in, it's hard when you're older to make guy friends, I feel like. Although I hear there's new apps, and there's like a Tinder app, and then I can't remember the name of it. There's like a new app for meeting dudes. But I ran into this guy. He comes up and he's like, Jason Ancona, and I'm looking at him, and I know he looks familiar, but we're like, it's been 20 years. He's like, Scott Dean, we went to college together, and so we were both divorced and in this new city, and we became best friends, and we did so many things that was similar to Dr. Cheapskate in terms of going out in the social scene as two older guys trying to meet women and struggling, and we tried the whole online dating thing, much like in the movie, and talked together about like, oh, should we put this in the profile? I'm like actually, my friend Scott would probably kill me saying this type of stuff, but I kind of want to take credit for his current girlfriend because he never smiled in any photos. And I'm like, dude, you look like you're a killer in all of your photos. It's like a blank stare. And so he changed the smile, and then he had some success. But actually, Scott Dean, he is the one I cast as Bo in the movie. He's Dr. Cheapskate's friend, just because he's like the funniest guy. He tells stories so well. He's like super confident, and I knew I could write him because I hung out with him like every weekend for years here.
So he's basically playing the characters he's based on.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
That's really interesting. That adds to the question I was going to ask you too, because I got a bit of a swingers vibe from the movie. and it's cool. And in Swingers as well, they're basically playing the same characters that they're based on, so that's really cool.
Yeah, and to your point, I don't think I answered your question, so I'm kind of ADD, so I'll probably forget
Oh,
questions. We have to come back. Well, Jason, I asked you this, but yeah, I mean, Swingers was definitely inspiration. I mean, their production value and everything. I mean, it was a much higher level, but that and then kind of a mix between Swingers and a movie I also enjoyed that was kind of had similar components. Not it was Crazy Stupid Love with kind of like how Ryan Gosling's character helped Steve Carell kind of get back into it a little bit.
and like yeah, Scott Dean is his name. He was kind of the Vince Vaughn character, but he also kind of reminded me a bit of Jon Favreau, which I thought was kind of
Yeah,
interesting.
I mean he's like the funniest character. So in like rom-coms, you always have like the cute meet. I mean, this is a bromance, this movie. So like I always have Scott tell the story because he's more confident and can tell stories like much better than I can. So he always tells it, but I mean he can really tell that story of how we first met, like and like hey Jason Ancona, and then just like all these little things. He's just so quirky and so fun. And like I knew he'd be great.
So going back a little bit then, did you always want to study film, or did that come later in
Yeah,
life,
it
or?
came later in life, and so I had a business degree and a marketing degree, and I hate to admit this, I really hate to admit this, but like back in college, like 20 some years ago, I was all about business. I love the movie The Wall Street. I read The Stupid Art of the Deal, and believe me, I'm not voting that way. So if you become president, no, I don't like you anymore. Um, but yeah, so I was all about that, and then I actually married my college sweetheart, and got divorced, and from then I I was searching, and I moved to LA to live with a friend. A couple of whatever reason, a few of my friends from high school in Chicago moved to LA. So I'm like, what the hell, let me move. Actually, let me back up a little bit. Before my ex-wife and I got divorced, it was bad for a few years, and we're talking, and I'm like, well, I think I might go visit my friends in LA. And she just said, well, why don't you stay out there? And I'm like, okay, I got you. So I did. And so there was, I moved out there and I had a lot of different experiences. And totally randomly, I was working a sales job selling textbooks to high schools. And this girl was like, I always love movies. She's like, oh, I took this screenwriting class at UCLA. She's like, this teacher's amazing. His name is Chris Cannan. I'm like, that sounds really cool. And then I saw like the price for one extension class was like $470 plus parking. And I'm like, can be a little thrifty at times. And I'm like, man, $500 for one class. I'm so thankful I freaking did. And, I took that class and the teacher was like, complimenting my work and said, hey, I really think you can do this. And the script I wrote in this class, my first one, like well over a decade ago, was called Notch 22. And it was like a finalist in a Scriptapalooza contest out of like 4,100 scripts. And someone else in that UCLA class he worked at Fox Studios. He's like, hey, I want to read everything you write. And so like the next 6 or 7 scripts, he like, wrote, or he read like, 5, 10, 15 drafts, and he passed it up the ladder. And so one of my catalysts for leaving LA was after, a decade of never seeing anything happen, never having an agent, is when this guy who, Oliver Tatum, who's super generous and about reading all my stuff, he left for me, and he couldn't have been more of an insider. I mean, here I was, like on the Fox studio lots, like, talking with him, like how I need to fix all these scripts. And he left, and he's like, let me tell you something, Jason. Selling a script to a studio is like winning a fucking lottery ticket. And here I am, like approaching 40. I'm like, maybe I need to really rethink this a little bit, just because LA is so expensive, and I love it. And I mean, I love the ocean, and I mean, there's obviously douchey places to LA, but there's cool people there. I mean, one of my best friends there, Jeff Miller, he's from South Carolina. He's like the funniest, nicest guy you'll meet. So I think there's good people everywhere.
Yeah, that's for sure. Like, they say certain places are like, bad areas, but I think there's always like there's a bad area everywhere, every place you go. Um, yeah. Well, I was gonna say too, because you're in Austin,
Yeah.
Texas, right? Yeah. That's one of kind of the overlooked places in terms of film because you hear about LA and you hear about New York, but Austin, Texas is quite a vibrant film community there, is it
Yeah,
not?
it is. I mean, they have South by Southwest, which Dr. Cheapskate got rejected from, like most festivals. But yeah, and they have the Austin Film Festival, which is a screenwriting type of festival, which is in the fall, which we're hoping to get into. But there is a creative community. When I moved to Austin, when I left LA, I was having my midlife crisis, right at 40, and I was just like, man, what do I want to do with my life? And I was actually researching like being an English teacher in Japan and also South Korea. I actually was emailing this guy who was a teacher in Japan, and the Fukushima happened. I'm like, I don't know if you remember that when like the whole nuclear thing happened there in Japan.
Yeah.
But luckily he was okay. But I'm like, maybe. And so I headed down to Denver and Austin, but Austin seemed to have like a creative community, a film community, and so I decided to go there. And I've met a lot of cool people. The Austin Film Society does a lot of things. Like I think this weekend they have like an artist institute type thing where they're talking about distribution, and so it is a great small city. But I think Robert Rodriguez is here and some other places, people too.
Yeah, yeah. Just I think it's an overlooked one, I think, and it doesn't get as much mention as some of these like the popular ones. I do these a lot.
That's okay. But that being said, so like I remember for years and years ago, putting in an audition in Backstage West because I think it was really pre-big internet, and for like a little trailer for that script, Notch 22, and I swear to God, for like 3 weeks, and it was like non-paid just for a promotional trailer. For 3 weeks, my mailbox was just filled with headshots. I'm like, oh my God. And so here in Austin, like for like the next one I'm shooting this last one, you post on this place where everyone goes and it's like probably 1/50th of the amount of people that like submit that in LA, probably just because of numbers.
Mm. Yeah, everyone in LA it seems like is a struggling actor, right? So I gotta ask you then, since you said the movie is a little bit autobiographical, are you as thrifty as the main character, or?
No, I definitely have some friends and family. Like my uncle, he's a retired anesthesiologist, and actually the character was an anesthesiologist, and he saves everything. Like he has stuff, like he never throws anything out. He has probably like pants from the '70s. Like his wife, my mom's sister, Aunt Marilyn, she does secret dumpster runs. Like when he's out of the house, she just like digs it from the basement. Like this is going. So that being said, I do sometimes have thrifty moments. Like I don't like paying for parking, but I will. Probably one of my most stingiest moments was probably when I was first moved to LA, and a bunch of my friends from high school went to Vegas. So it's not that far from LA to Vegas. It's like, a 4-hour drive or an hour flight. And I knew I was just going for the weekend. And my friends and I are, we were like, I'd say them more than me are gambling addicts. So I'm just like, I think I'm just going to go and stay through the night and not get a hotel. And so they had gotten a hotel. And so I was like, we actually stayed up and we went out and were drinking, and I'm like, my whole plan was, I did have a flight because it was like, I think I got like a crazy cheap flight for like $100. And so my plan was fly in, go out, and then fly back the next day. So it was like 5 or 6 in the morning, and my friends were like, come on, Jay, we'll just charge you like XYZ. But I'm like, no, I'm gonna fight through this thing. And I remember something that happened. So I'm just like walking around like dead to the world by myself at like 5 in the morning, and I go into this bathroom. It was like the Caesar Forum shops or something. That was where the bathroom was. And I'm in there, and I went to the bathroom, and I get out, and some lady turns and looks at me, and she's like, what are you doing in here? I'm like, what are you doing in here? She's like, this is the women's bathroom. And I look, and I'm like, oh, sorry. And so I just walked out, but I did not end up staying in the hotel or paying. I ended up flying out that next day and not, being part of the hotel. Although it was communicated from the get-go, that was my plan. I didn't like shirk out of saying, hey, I'm in on this hotel.
Okay, yeah, and you mentioned this before we started recording, but you also wrote some novels as well?
Yeah, so that was actually, kind of on a whim too. So my first screenwriting professor, Chris Canan, we always talk and stuff, and he's an Emmy award-winning writer from TV, and it's just he's like, I was talking, he's like, man, it's so hard to get a script read in this town. He's like, I'm starting to write books, so you should write a book. yeah, maybe I'll write a book. And so one of my pilots, a covert youth agency, I'm like, oh, let me just, turn this into a novel. And so I'm like, oh, spend a little bit of time, and I didn't really spend that much time making it into a novel. And so I queried all these agents in New York City, and within like a month, I got an agent. I'm like, holy shit, what the hell? I'm like, here I am 10 years, never get one agent or manager in LA. I write one, and so I got notes from HarperCollins, like, love the story, love the characters, like the way that the plot moves, reads too much like a screenplay. So the HarperCollins lady gave me another shot, and I had to rewrite, and they passed, and then so I wrote a couple more novels, debugging Tori Redding, and the Sex Crime, which is CYA Book 2. And I just ended up self-publishing those because my agent, when I queried on the second book, she had been, moved on to another agency, and I don't even know if she went to another agency, but she was no longer with that agency, and the new one didn't want to pick me up. So I was just like, all right. And there was kind of a big self-publishing movement right at the time. I don't know if you know who Amanda Hawking is.
No, I'm
So
sorry.
she wrote like 10 books that were kind of similar to Twilight, but it was like ogres, whatever. And she was like a great personality, like in her 20s, had purple hair, and just had an awesome blog, awesome following. But she made like 900,000 on Amazon, just straight on Amazon, like with all of her 10 books. And there's some people really pushing that. But she actually did sell out to a publisher for a couple, 1 point something million. And they're like, why did you do it? She's like, because I spend like a full-time job writing the blog and doing all this stuff and that. But so yeah, I have not, really had much success with those novels.
Well, I mean, do you plan on doing that at the same time as the film stuff, or do you want to focus
Yeah,
more on
I
film
mean,
and
I really do want to focus on film. There's a part of me that's like so many things that are done that studios do are from proven properties. They're from comic books. They're from so many that you don't even know are actually off of novels. So I feel like if you can actually get a novel and that's successful, they would, want to move forward. It actually, an agency, like a CAA, Creative Artists Agency, my agent at the time was like, hey, CAA wants the rights to CYA or whatever, Covert Youth Agency. And of course, that was before, HarperCollins and everyone, those guys turned it down. So that all went away. I tried contacting them after that went down, and they were like, we couldn't even get anyone on the phone.
Okay, so also before this movie, you'd written some other film stuff. So I'm wondering what it was like, because this is your directorial
Yeah, yeah.
debut. So what was it like going from just the writing side over to the director's chair? That's a pretty big
Yeah,
jump.
I mean, it was really cool. I mean, believe me, I was novice through and through, and I was learning so much. And Michael Rogers, the cinematographer, was very helpful. I mean, guy's like a young genius, and I'm lucky to have met him on Craigslist. It wasn't a personal section; it was just, I just saw his reel. That's it. And
Wasn't that part
yeah,
of Craigslist?
but it was really cool though because I mean, literally, like every writer knows, you like spend all your time in the dark writing and rewriting and rewriting, and you never actually like so much of the time it never sees the light of day to actually do it and know what you kind of want out of the scenes, even though you're restricted by budget, restricted by you can't shoot here this long, or money reasons, like things are cut or changed. It's so cool to be a part of it and kind of get to play in the world that you create when you're writing, as opposed to just writing it and watch someone else do it. So I loved
Do you,
it.
do you, do you find it harder to, because as a director, you're kind of clashing a little bit with yourself as a writer, right? Because you have to kind of make choices to cut things
Yeah,
sometimes. Do you find that hard to do, doing both, having to make that choice?
yeah. I mean, it wasn't too bad. It's more of like I think it's just frustrating because you wish you had more time. One example is in the restaurant scene with the dates at the end. You know, we begged and borrowed to let this restaurant shoot before it opened, like on a Sunday from like 7 a.m. until 11 a.m. when they started opening for lunch. And we were so far behind and just like rushing through everything. There was a whole element that was supposed to be like just looks like pretty, a comedic element, looks between the waitress and him, and the bill coming and stuff. And that got just, I think we lost some dialogue and lost, a lot of that because we ran out of time and people were starting to come into the restaurant and we just had to wrap. So, and other things like that too. The bar scene too, where we were able to have someone let us shoot there, and we were wrapping, and we were always behind and chasing and just having to cut things. And so that's the frustrating part. And yeah, being the writer too, like every time I see like lines in the movie now, I could say, your line was this, and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, because I say that to Scott because we're like really close friends, but I'm like, it bothers me every time I hear it because it doesn't sound right. Because I think one of them was in the bar when he said something to the effect of, you know, something, I stared at her tits because he was talking, Dr. Cheapskate was talking about, how the girls used him. And I said, the line was big deal, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, hey, what are you going to do? And then also, since Michael, being as the cinematographer, being so talented, he was the editor. And I mean, that was a thing too, is because he always just wants, as a cinematographer, which is his main thing, he wants like the perfect looking shot. And so most of the time I was with him, if I wasn't, I'd be like, we'd be arguing over because he wants to know this one looks much better. Oh, we can't use that take. It looks horrible. I'm like, that was the best take from the acting standpoint. But, since he's editing and he's a cinematographer, he's like, no, this scene looks the best. I don't, so we'd argue back and forth. Like, it's more important to have the best take, not have it look the best. So that type of thing.
Yeah, two totally different goals there. So I want to ask you about the casting process too, because well, first of all, you already said that Scott Dean is essentially playing his real life role. But for the other two guys, because there's like two main characters. The third one's more of a supporting. But did any of them know each other? And if not, did you get a lot of rehearsal time with them beforehand?
That's one thing I wish I would have. Being a new director and first time doing this, I wish I would have had some more rehearsal time. I met Ray Rosales at a business networking thing where everyone had like a name tag, like, human resources, marketing, sales. And so everyone had like that on there. And Ray had something that said actor on it. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. So I knew I was having auditions in a few weeks. And I went up to him. He's like, yeah, I work at IBM, but I also do some acting and try to get print work, or not print work, but like commercials and stuff. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I'm like, so he's super nice. I'm like, hey, you should definitely audition for this. And so yeah, he came out and auditioned, and we had a good number of people, a variety of people, improv background, all type of background, and he was our favorite. So it was kind of random, but he did a great job.
Nice. Oh, so none of so they didn't know each other at all.
Yeah, no, they didn't know each other at all. The only ones that knew each other was Scott and I, and then Andrew. We had auditions and for the antagonist role, and we went through all these auditions and we're just like, it was like the end of the night and we're all tired and, through this a million times. And we're just like, we're going to have another round of auditions. And then Andrew was our last guy for that role. And he comes in like a tank top and he's all jacked up. He's got the flip flops and he did, really well. And Scott had just gotten into CrossFit. And so like, oh my God, we love this guy. We got to like lock him down. Like, because you're selling the dream of like, because this is so low budget, this is over weekends, and you're asking a lot of time people to do this, and he agreed to do it, so we're real thankful for that.
And also, you made quite a jump because I noticed that one of the previous movies you did was a horror movie about Paul Bunyan.
Yes.
And to jump from that to a buddy like a buddy movie, a comedy. Yeah. Now, I want to ask you, because that's such a big jump, is there a specific genre that you're predominantly interested in, or do you kind of want to cast in all different kinds of films?
Yeah, I always have written and loved like comedies and that type of thing. That being said, like, I love everything from Dumb and Dumber to like Shawshank Redemption is probably my favorite movie. I'll admit it, I love Breakfast at Tiffany's and Amelie, and I'll cry faster than most girls. But so I could see myself eventually maybe trying some experimenting with drama or perhaps maybe romantic comedy, maybe in romance movies. But with the challenge of like getting things at UCLA, they just hammer you on like concept. So like spend more time on figuring out a fun concept before you like even write a line. So until I see some success, I'm going to be trying to do those concepts in the comedy world, which I do love. So and to your point about the horror movies. So yeah, it's totally random how I got into that too. So it sucks. Like every writer knows like you write and you submit to contests, you have some success, and you never see anything happen. You never see like anything you write, be on the big screen. So my second script after Not 22 was called Gordy Beach Meter Maid. It was a really silly movie, like written for like Jim Carrey, like an Ace Ventura type movie about like this overzealous meter maid that wants to be a cop, but he keeps failing the exam, so he takes his meter maid duties like hardcore. So it's silly, stupid. So you either like it or like, oh, this sucks. So at a screenwriting networking event, I met this guy, Jeff Miller, and who does these horror movies. And we just started talking, like, super cool guy. And so I sent him my script, Meter Maid, and he sent me his script, a horror movie. And he read Meter Maid. He's like, probably like, this thing sucks. And I read his horror. I'm like, and so we never talked again. Probably like, oh, thanks for the script. That's it. So then randomly, like, these two girls are like, hey, we love Meter Maid and get it Adam Sandler. Of course, they never did. Well, like, we're going to Sundance. Why don't you come with us? We have like 10 people going, stay in a condo. You take the couch. I'm like, I'll take the couch. And so here I am at Sundance, and at the No Name Saloon bar, this guy turns around, Jeff Miller. He's like, do I know you from somewhere? And I'm like, oh yeah, the screenwriting, whatever. So we actually hung out that Sundance, became best friends, and he's like, hey, I'm doing these. I sent him my other script, Not 22, which he really liked, and he's like, hey, why don't you be a part of my next movie? So I was a co-writer along with him and the other director, Gary Jones, and they shot Axe Giant, The Wrath of Paul. So even though it's not really my genre, I was just so happy because it's kind of like the end of my not end of it, but just like finally see something get made. I would do it in any genre. You're working, you're doing craft services. I was like the coffee guy. Everyone bitched about my coffee because I make shitty coffee because I don't drink coffee. I used to drink Monster like 3 a day, but I'll cut that. But so you're doing everything, even though it's like you're doing all the shit jobs. But just to see like people say your lines and see a movie get made, and it actually premiered on Sci-Fi Channel. So like it was so cool to see like, oh, I wrote that, even though it's not like the genre I love. It was so cool to see. And then they did another one. We did another one called. It was initially called Volcano Zombies. We were like, what concept we can do like Sharknado, but lower budge. And so we did Volcano Zombies, and they made that, and they changed it to Burning Dead, and so it was cool, to be a part of it getting made, and that's what kind of inspired me to make my own. And actually, the Duplass brothers, especially, they're out of Austin. They're like talking about how he and his brother like went from crappy apartment to crappy apartment, and they made a movie, a couple movies and more, and just like do it yourself. And they kept one of my favorite refrains in their speech is like, the cavalry is not coming. Like, just make the best way you do this. You're gonna think this is gonna happen. It's probably not. And then you're like, you do this, you do this, and you're like, the cavalry is not coming. And they constantly say like eventually you become the cavalry. And so that's really inspired me. Like, you know what, you gotta do it yourself, because it's good. I've seen like how hard it is to do the other way. Not that you don't try to get in those avenues. So that's what I'm trying to do now.
Okay, so I wanted to ask then, besides Dr. Cheapskate, do you have anything else that you're currently working on, or anything that's coming up soon that you want to mention?
Well, so it's, I'm saying it's coming up soon, but I remember telling Andrew Key, because we started doing this like in 2014, and over weekends, Dr. Cheapskate. And I'm like, yeah, maybe in 2016. He was like, 2016? And I'm like, so now I'll tell you about my project now that we're going to shoot in the fall. It's probably like 2017, 2018 probably. But yeah, it's called Tag Team Truckers. And I actually was inspired by an ad I actually heard on the radio from Schneider Team Trucking. And it was this ad, and it's like, Team Trucking, bring your buddy, bring your wife, truck across America, work together, long distance truckers make the most money. I'm like, that's a funny concept to like get two people together. And Scott's going to be in this one as the conservative brother. And then there's kind of like a 20-something who can't, keep a job. He can't figure out what he wants to do. And so he hears the ad, and kind of like in the movie Stripes, when Harold Ramis and Bill Murray, like, they hate their job. Like, Bill Murray's a taxi cab driver, and Harold Ramis is like teaching English as a second language. And they see it as this commercial for like, hey, join the army. So, I mean, obviously that's on a much grander scale. So yeah, it's kind of, that type of thing where it sets them up to try this tag team trucking thing.
In general, while you were filming, obviously budgetary things got in the way occasionally. Was there any like one big hurdle that you had to overcome, or like a series of hurdles in regards to maybe like location or anything like that you can think of?
I mean, one of the biggest challenges is because we're shooting over a weekend, is to get everyone to agree on the same weekend. Even though it's a small amount of people, like you have one person, and Scott actually does some travel for business, and he sometimes we have like, oh man, I have this business trip I have to go on. So like we got to cancel like everything we had just planned for this location, for this shoot, rechange everything, and sometimes it'll be like 2-3 weeks, a month later before we can get that going. And so Scott and Ray complained that scene when we did the paddle boarding with Scott and Ray in the water. It was freezing because it got pushed back, like I swear, like a month and a half. So it was like winter and it was freezing. You could see like the trees were all like fall and like changing color. And it was so cold in there. And then Scott was like, we couldn't even get like a take. It was so hard to find a take when he was in the water, like on the leaning on the paddleboard, just swear like you sound out of breath, like you're dying and all this. I'm like, and so just like that was the thing. So yeah, so my now wife, we were engaged at the time. Her family was like, oh, we wanted to see what Jason does. And so it was that day. They show up on the day with the paddleboarding where it's cold and, and it was a nightmare filming that scene because it's hard to like coordinate. It was windy that day and coordinating like them to be lined up so they're talking. We did like so many times. And here I am like yelling in front of my, fiance's parents, like, get together. And Ray, Dr. Cheapskate, for whatever reason, just sucked at paddleboarding. I'm like, Scott, show him how to paddleboard. I'm like, because he was like 10 steps behind. It took him forever to make any kind of move. We are just like, dude, this is taking forever. But that was like a hurdle for sure.
All right, well, I want to thank you very much for stopping by here to talk about Dr. Cheapskate and the art of the deal. And how you'll be definitely supporting him in November. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct at
all. No, but seriously, thank you very much for stopping by, and good luck on the film.
All right, thanks, Brendan. Appreciate it.